Alright, so today we're going to be going over how to defeat the Abundant Ebon Deer in the new Simulated Universe World 7 in Honkai Star Rail. Now, the Ebon Deer is a boss that we fought previously in the main story, and for those of you who have made it to World 6 of Memory of Chaos, he also is there. However, we now have him in Simulated Universe, and, there's a bit more to, when you're thinking about how to deal with Simulated Universe bosses. So, we're going to talk about that today, go over all the phases for the Ebon Deer, and just give my general recommendations and strategy for the fight. So if you like this kind of content and want to see more, definitely be sure to hit that like button, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel, and ring that notification bell. So to start out with each of his phases, so in Phase 1, the Ebon Deer is pretty simple, nothing really too crazy, and nothing really super special to Phase 1. So in Phase 1, I believe that he can have up to 2 of his branches or twigs up at a time. And in Phase 1, they will either be a twig of Wintry Wind or a twig of Marble Leaf. Now, the twig of Wintry Wind makes it so that allies who are inflicted with the Outrage condition from its attack, it makes them attack random enemies that are allied to the branch that attacked and made them outraged. So that one really isn't too annoying because you're still doing damage to the enemy. It's not like Kafka's Dominate where you're doing damage to your own team. So it is like a debuff, so you can't really control what you're attacking, but in Phase 1 it's not really too bad to deal with. And then the twig of Marble Leaf is it has 2 main things it can do. The first one being that it can buff the Ebon Deer's damage. And then, secondly, when it spawns, it'll put up a counter, and if you attack it while its counter's up, it will counterattack you. So yeah, really in Phase 1, you can kind of just focus on the deer himself. It's not going to be, you're not really going to be getting messed up by either of these twigs too much in the first phase. And plus, he can only have 2 twigs up at a time in Phase 1, so yeah, you won't really be overwhelmed by anything that much in this phase. Then we go on to Phase 2. So yeah, Phase 2 gets a little harder. He can now have 4 twigs up at once. So at the beginning of Phase 2, he will automatically spawn 2 twigs of Marble Leaf, 1 twig of Wintry Wind, and 1 twig of Glorious Bloom. So yeah, so 2 of the counter attack twigs, 1 of the ones that can outrage your allies, and then this new twig called Twig of Glorious Bloom. And the Twig of Glorious Bloom pretty much can just heal the Ebon Deer and other twigs for an amount equal to 25% of the Glorious Bloom's max HP. And yeah, so this phase is really, it's more so abundance based, more so healing based than the others. The Marble Leaf and the Wintry Wind are going to have the similar effects as they did previously in Phase 1, but the Twig of Glorious Bloom is going to be able to keep them alive for longer if you're not able to take them down. And then also the Ebon Deer has an ability only in Phase 2, which it can restore its own HP by 10% during Phase 2. So yeah, it's just going to be a lot of healing that you'll have to deal with in Phase 2. But if you are doing enough damage, you should be just fine to get through that. Then we're going to move on to Phase 3. Now Phase 3 is the phase that you should absolutely be terrified for, and I was terrified when I got to the equivalent of this in Forgotten Hall in Memory of Chaos. So at the beginning of Phase 3, just like in Phase 2, the Ebon Deer will spawn 4 twigs, and even if twigs were alive at the end of a phase, they'll die when the phase switches, so that the Ebon Deer can spawn the new set of twigs in, which is definitely also something good to think about. But for Phase 3, the Ebon Deer is going to spawn 2 twigs of Lavish Fruits, and then 1 of Marble Leaf and 1 of Wintry Wind. So the same one of each from the Phase 1 twigs, and then he's spawning 2 twigs of Lavish Fruits. And these are the scary ones, because, from my experience at least, these have been the most tanky. And the way they work is that instead of them, damaging you or having some kind of effect, they're actually there to fuel what I consider the Ebon Deer's ultimate, called Flamboyant Gore. It's a massive attack, and it does a lot of damage, and then extra damage based on how many twigs are on the field at a time. And the Ebon Deer can only use Flamboyant Gore when there are 2 twigs of lavish fruits on the stage. So right at the beginning of phase 3, there's 2. So you got to deal with those before the Ebon Deer's turn comes up. Because if that turn comes up, you're taking a lot of damage. And every time, I've only been hit by it a couple times. I think I got hit once in the main story and once in Memory of Chaos. But it's basically a wrap if you get hit by that. Because the damage is really crazy. I mean, maybe Jeopard can like deal with it. But not every player is going to be running Jeopard. He could be good in this stage, but I'll go over that in my general recommendations in a bit. But overall, for phase 3, you really just want to focus on those lavish fruits, get rid of them, and make sure that you don't have 2 on the field at a time when the Ebon Deer's turn is going to come up. And if you're able to manage those, similarly to the other 2 phases, the Twig of Marple Leaf and the Twig of Wintry Wind, isn't really that crazy. So they're kind of just going to be there. And yeah, you should be good to get through phase 3 as long as the Ebon Deer doesn't get the Flamboyant Gore off. So now for my general recommendations. So like I said previously, for the phases, in phases 1 and 2, you can pretty much just like mainly focus on the Ebon Deer. Like sure, there's going to be some healing, there's going to be some like things with the twigs here and there, but they, at least in my experience, they haven't really proved to be that annoying to me. But then when you get to phase 3, you gotta focus on those twigs of lavish fruits, or like making sure that if you have enough weakness break on your team to try to break the Ebon Deer weakness as soon as possible to push back the Flamboyant Gore, because as I said, once it goes for Flamboyant Gore, you're gonna take a ton of damage, and it might just be game over in a lot of situations, especially if you're doing some of the higher difficulties. So, in terms of character recommendations, I definitely recommend bringing damage dealers that are good against the Ebon Deer and Lavish Fruits weakness types, and thankfully both of them share 2 elemental weaknesses, so you can really just like bring characters for that. So the first one is Quantum, so I recommend characters like Seele, Qingque. If you have Silverwolf, she can be good for debuffing the Ebon Deer as well, which will be nice. And then the second type is Fire. And for Fire, you can bring Hook. If you have a Himiko built, you can bring her. Fire MC can be good for defense in certain situations as well. So yeah, those are like the main characters you'd want to bring. I definitely do like the Quantum damage dealers more for this, because they are both stronger than Himiko, and also, with Seele, she can have like kind of like a multi-target attack, quote unquote, because if you kill one of the twigs, you can attack another one, which is super nice. And then for Qingque, if you get her enhanced basic attack, she'll hit adjacent enemies, which is super nice. Then also for Fire, I also want to highlight Asta as well, because while she's not going to be doing a lot of damage, like Hook might be, she'll be very good for getting weakness break off. And if you're in a situation where you're able to get the Ebon Deer alone for like a moment, if you get rid of all the twigs, you can use Asta and get a good amount of weakness break as well. And then, the last thing I want to talk about for Simulated Universe specifically is choosing your path wisely. And I think this is super important for the Deer because a lot of paths, they do have an AoE path resonance, so it's important to see what's going to work the best with your team. So for me personally, with my team, I used the Path of the Hunt, and that worked really well. I had the resonance formations to give me 2 charges of it, and then also regenerating like half the max charges with the when I'm able to defeat one of the twigs or any enemies. So that was able to help me to keep the twigs down. Other resonances, depending on your team build, like if you're running like a Clara or like a follow-up attack team, like if you're running like Clara, March 7th, that kind of stuff, you could do Passive Elation, that can work. If you're running a Jeopard team, you can run Preservation. That'll also be good. It'll be a little slow, which is the one reason I don't really use Preservation like that, but it definitely does work for sure. And yeah, I think the only 2 paths that might give you a bit of trouble, just based on the way that the Ebon Deer fight works, is Path of Nihility, because the damage is not really like instant. If you have good blessings, I think it'll be fine, but in terms of like getting rid of those of the twigs, it might be a little bit longer than other like resonances. And then also like Abundance could be good for sure. Because I think Abundance is just good across the board, especially with the Resonance formation that makes it as part of the turn order to heal you. But I definitely think that I definitely think like the paths that have a damage, like AoE damage resonance, are going to be your best friend. I do think the Hunt one might be the best one for this, but yeah, let me know what you all think of this fight in the comments down below. I hope this guide is going to help you all out to be able to beat the Ebon Deer Simulated Universe boss. But yeah, thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed, make sure to leave a like, comment, subscribe to the channel, all that fun stuff, and I will see you all next time.